Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Play On podcast. This is a football edition, and in this part, myself and Luke are going to have a look at the action which took place in the Ulster Football Championship of 2021 over the weekend. So, we have our Ulster Final for 2021. It is Tyrone against Monaghan. Not the Ulster Final that we predicted. We thought Donegal would beat Tyrone. Tyrone looked very impressive. They beat Donegal by 23 points to 114. Monaghan beat Armagh by 4-17 to 2 goals and 22 points. We'll start with the Tyrone game. Tyrone, as I've said, very impressive, but the Michael Murphy red card was a huge turning point. You can't understate how important Michael Murphy is to Donegal, but, Tyrone looked good. Brian Dooher, and Fergal Logan, their stamp seems to have been made on the team. Conor McKenna looked very good. They've got game time into Cathal McShane. And yeah, they're shaping up nicely now.
Yeah, I just want to remind you, actually, the last week in the podcast, I actually tipped Tyrone in the end. So, I'm pretty happy with that call anyway. And, I thought they were deserving kind of winners. I think they did look very, very impressive. 23 points is a good old tally to score. And, the Murphy red card was obviously a huge factor in it. Losing Neil McGee was a factor as well. Donegal probably didn't get a completely fair crack of the whip, but I don't think Murphy can have any complaints with the red card. There were two clear yellows, and I suppose once that happens, Tyrone, they just have to beat what's ahead of them. And look, they had their times when they were down to 14 as well. Like, it kind of looked tight for the last 10 minutes going into it, and when even after McGeary was black carded there at the end, Tyrone instead, when they went down to 14 each, Tyrone just pulled away. So I think that kind of summed it up that they were a better team today, and it was a completely fair result.
Yeah, I agree with that. And one of the things that, has really impressed me about Brian Dooher and Fergal Logan stamp is Tyrone looks so dangerous up front. Even like coming off the bench, Tiernan McCann hit 3 points. He looked exceptional. He has to start, in my opinion, as well as that Matty Donnelly. They've kind of switched him around a lot of different positions. But, he started with number 14 on his back, and he really looks back to his best.
Yeah, look, I think particularly inside, when he was playing in the full forward line, he looked really, really good. And he was a complete handful. They couldn't really cope with him in the full forward line. He was kind of moved out when McShane came on, and his kind of influence diminished a little bit. So that'll be an interesting one, whether they, I think we might see that for the Ulster Final, that McShane has to kind of make do with a spot on the bench in order to allow Matty Donnelly to play full forward, where he's playing so well right now. So, you look at that full forward line, and you're looking at him, and you're looking at beside him, you've got Darren McCurry, who's in the form of his life as well. So it's all of a sudden, it's a very formidable kind of forward line. As well, I want to make a point on the two wing forwards who, well, I know he was kind of named with wing back on his back for Sludden, but Niall Sludden and Kieran McGeary, I thought, were absolutely exceptional. They both ran at the Donegal defence all day, and kicked 3 points each as well. So, look, they were really, really good. And they were probably the two kind of main arguments for man of the match. And McGeary won it ultimately in the end. But, they really set the template. They worked back all day, kind of. They won an off and all ball and then carried it forward and then kicked their score as well. So I think that was a huge aspect. The likes of them, and then the Frank Burns and all the likes there, kind of doing all the work around the middle, was probably the difference between the two teams.
Yeah, no, they have such serious strength and depth. I'd almost argue, do Tyrone have the best kind of talent in depth of any team in the county right now? Like, do they have? Because when you're thinking about it, obviously Dublin, they have a lot of talented players. So do Kerry, but I'd find it I'd find it much easier to pick my starting 15 for Dublin and for Kerry than I would for Tyrone.
Yeah, well, look, I suppose we kind of have questions about with the new management team coming in, they're trying to still pick out their best 15, and maybe they haven't quite fully identified yet. Like you said, it's kind of hard to believe that Tiernan McCann's not playing wing back, I suppose. Like, I know there are kind of loads of options there as well, but you look at the impact he has, that it was exceptional stuff, really. So and then look, we haven't even factored kind of in Conor McKenna and Colin McShane back into the starting 15 as well. So look, I get your point that there's definitely 21 players that you consider to be starting on that team, and they probably don't fully know how to integrate them all just yet, but there is a ridiculous amount of talent. And say if they do hold those fellas back and then kind of put them on late on in games, like there's some subs to have. And I suppose the fact that they pulled away in the last 5 minutes of that game suggests that having the much stronger bench on the day was ultimately key for them.
Yeah, and you haven't even mentioned the likes of Paul Donaghy, who was exceptional during the league. Derek Canavan as well. If he comes back to full fitness, he's a real live wire. Mark Bradley as well, the pace that he has. Like, my point about the whole thing about Tyrone having the hardest starting 15 to pick is I feel like, they do have a few players that pick themselves. The likes of Darren McCurry now, Matty Donnelly, they have to start. But a lot of players, the likes of Mark Bradley, Canavan, Paul Donaghy, they're all kind of at similar levels. Whereas, Dublin and Kerry have the elite of the elite players, the likes of David Clifford and Con O'Callaghan and Kieran Kilkenny. Whereas Tyrone have a lot of exceptional footballers, but I think they're just a little bit below the Brian Fentons of the game.
Yeah, it's probably a fair old argument. So I think well, look, they obviously have their superstars. I think the Peter Harts and the Matty Donnellys, and then you look at Ronan McNamee in fullback again. He did another kind of game where McBrearty faced probably one of the best man markers in the country. I think McNamee did a huge job with McBrearty, and McBrearty wasn't really a factor for the entire game. So like Tyrone kind of you look at that full back line as well. Michael McKernan, Porrick Hampsey and McNamee, like that is a really mean full back line, and it's very, very difficult to try and get any change out of that full back line. And you look at that as well. They limited that Donegal forward line to 114, and it's an exceptional defence. And knowing that you have that at the back, it's probably the best full back line I think going. And look at that kind of template to build upon is going to bring you far in the year. And I think that kind of performance of the weekend has confirmed them as serious contenders if they can get over Monaghan in the Ulster Final.
Yeah, and speaking of Monaghan, they qualified for the Ulster Final, beating Armagh in a remarkable game. 4 goals and 17 points to 2 goals and 22. And people say that Ulster football is defensive. That is a remarkable scoreline. Conor McManus as well. This guy, he went off injured in the last game. The guy just proves that he's made of iron, comes back absolutely superb. And, his pressure kick, to get Monaghan over the line, that really saw them home. And that sets up such an exciting Ulster Final, in my opinion, now that Monaghan have beaten Armagh. Jack McCarron, unbelievable. He caused havoc, got himself 2 assists. Monaghan on, such an emotional day, which, the reasons we'll come to in a minute. But, for them to win such a remarkable game, they definitely did, their county proud.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a remarkable game on a kind of it was a surreal kind of atmosphere up in Enniskillen on the day, and the fact that the game between the Monaghan and Donegal under-20s had taken place in the very same ground just the night before, and we saw the tragic kind of scenes that followed the night before. It was it was kind of a remarkable day, really, and a really difficult day for kind of all the members of the Monaghan team. And look, they did themselves completely they did themselves really proud there with that performance, and it was just an exceptional game, really.
Yeah, and of course, while we're on that topic about, the tragic news which happened, Brendan O'Duffy, of course, passing away, Monaghan under-20 footballer, this guy had a great future ahead of him, and very, very sad news. And me and Luke just want to give our best wishes to his friends and family, and, just can't imagine what they're going through. And rest in peace, Brendan.
Yep, absolutely. I think that's it sums up nicely. And it was it's a surreal story when you hear about this, that a player coming after such an amazing result for the Monaghan under-20s the night before, for somebody to not make it on the way home. And I think it's a story that it's shocked kind of the entire country. And it's a tragic story. And there was kind of questions about whether the game should even go ahead, considering how distressing the whole story really was. But look, it was really, really brave for the players to go out there and to perform to the level that they did, and probably a fitting result in the end.
Yeah, and the fact that they went on to win, of course, that's what I mean when they did their county proud. They did Brendan proud, I'm sure. And yeah, to win such an epic game, fair play to Armagh as well. It must have been a difficult game to play against, once it meant so much to Monaghan, but that just shows the unity really in Gaelic football. And, Monaghan, did their county and did Brendan proud. And now they're in the Ulster Final, of course, against Tyrone. They did have to curtail some good performances by Armagh. Reno O'Neill was fantastic. He had an immense second half. Conor Turbritt as well, had a huge impact when he came into the game. And yeah, like Armagh did put up a good fight, but they go out again at the championship. Is this a year of progress for them?
I think so. I think it was a really good league, but then like you watch that game at the weekend, and looks the same old problems. Like I can't get over how naive defensively they were in the first half. It was ridiculous. Kind of. It was Jack McCarron's got left 1-on-1, I thought, the full forward line. And once the direct ball got into him, he was either turning his man and scoring himself, or he was laying it off. He, like we already said, he had 2 assists for goals where he just went out, one clean ball and laid it off for a fella. And then one time he goes in himself, wins the ball, turns his man and buries it. And it was just so wide open from Armagh. It was just ridiculous that like in a senior championship game for a team to be defending like they were in the first half, and you're kind of looking at it that a Division 1 side kind of being that naive. It was just it was really, really strange, and yeah, look, it must be really infuriating for them that this kind of issue can't be fixed. Well, it looks like it can't be fixed because this trend has been going on for a long, long time. So that those goals essentially caused Armagh to lose that game. Like I can't imagine scoring 222 in a football game and losing it. Like yeah, look, it's must be really, really frustrating for them because it was an avoidable defeat for that if they just shored up that defence a bit more.
Yeah, definitely. And, it seems to have been a problem that they've had even from before McGeaney was in charge, that from 8 to 15, they seem to have genuine world-class players. And then at the back, they're so vulnerable. And, but that's their championship over now. Monaghan go in to play against Tyrone in the Ulster Final, who we spoke about there earlier. And, yeah, Monaghan in good shape.
Yeah, I think so. I thought Monaghan looked very good. Like they came up against an Armagh forward line that were very good, but they're becoming against a Tyrone forward line that are just as, if probably better than that Armagh forward line. So, I think they're going to face challenges again. And look, they're not going to be facing a defence that's anywhere near as leaky as Armagh's. I don't think they're going to get much space at all against Tyrone. Look, they still have the forwards, like they've McCarron, they've got McManus, they've Bannigan, who looked really, really good as well. So, I think they certainly have the force to hurt Tyrone themselves, but it's going to be a much, much sterner test. I think it'll be a cagier kind of game where probably much lower scoring, I think, from both teams. Still probably be a bit more defensive minded, where they'll keep fellas behind the ball and they won't want to be getting caught out. So I think it'll be an anxious enough kind of game. I'd probably lean Tyrone by a point.
Yeah, I just look back at their league match, which finished 14 points apiece, with the 2 late points from Maddie Donnelly and Ryan McInnesby, had a real championship feel to it, that game. And yeah, I feel like both teams are scared of the opposite team's attack. I think Tyrone will be nervous of, the fact that McCarron looks so good right now. McManus as well looks immense, as he ever has. And then on the other side, Monaghan will be terrified of the likes of Conor McKenna, Maddie Donnelly, and Darren McCurry in particular. So I completely agree with you. I see it being a real cagey match, just like their league meeting was. But I feel like just because, when you look back at last year as well, Tipperary and Cavan, the fact that their season meant something special, particularly Tipperary, with it being the 100 years anniversary of Bloody Sunday, that really seemed to give their season an extra meaning. And, they kicked on to win the Munster title that year. I think Monaghan are in a nice position to beat Tyrone. They will be the underdogs. And obviously, now I'd see it almost, not to the same level, but I'd see it as, now they've got, a real, as if they didn't need any more motivation, but now they'll have such a motivation to win, obviously, for Brendan. And if they manage to win the Ulster title, I think that will mean so much to him, his family, all the players, and the county itself. And I feel like that extra bit of motivation might just get them over the line.
Yeah, look, I completely understand that, and I think like I think they'll be absolutely flying coming into that game. But I just think the performance of the weekend from Tyrone, I think that elevated them to legitimate All-Ireland contenders. I think they look really, really impressive. They don't seem to have any kind of holes in that team. So I think that Tyrone could be a serious factor that year, and like the potential of them playing Kerry in an All-Ireland semi final is it's a fairly enticing enough prospect as it is. So it'll be interesting enough. There's enough going forward, and I'm looking forward to that Ulster final. But I do think the Tyrone are going to end it.
Yeah, 100%. I understand why you think that. I'm going for Monaghan by a point, but as well as that, if Tyrone were to beat Monaghan, I think it would be nothing like the league meeting between Kerry and Tyrone, where Kerry put 6 goals past Tyrone. I think Tyrone have got so much better in such a short space of time. And yeah, I feel like, whichever it does end up being, I think it will be a classic semi-final. And yeah, so that is our review of the 2 Ulster football semi-finals and our preview of the Ulster final for 2021. Don't forget to catch all our other match reviews about the hurling and the football, and take care.